Can you hear me now? Are we good? Do we have audio? Audio, good. Very good. Yes. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. I thought I had unmuted myself when we started the stream. So what I was saying before is thank you for joining us this evening. This is our first ever hurricane live stream that we've done. This is a very big storm that is barreling down on mostly Nova Scotia, but the rest of Atlantic Canada. And it's going to be a big one. It's going to last for about 24 hours before dissipating and moving northwards. But during those 24 hours, it's going to be a little tumultuous. So just going to take a look at radar to start. You can see that the outer bands of the storm are just starting to peek through into radar now. Just in this area here, you can see the northern bands of Fiona. Sable Island is down in this area down here, so it still hasn't seen the strongest bit of this storm yet. This is just starting to move into the area and is visible in the long-range radar. The radar station I have up here right now is Marion Bridge on Cape Breton Island. So I figured that's a really good one to look at, but we can go over here for another perspective. This is Gore, and you can kind of see that there are some heavier rain bands that are not actually associated with the hurricane itself. What we're looking at is this bit right here. This is just the start of what we were looking at for the rain. Now, when we're talking about the rain, let me go. You can see as these outer bands are starting to move northward towards Cape Breton, this is the area that you're going to see the most amount of rain. We're looking at least 100 millimeters, 150, maybe even 200 in some areas. I've got a forecast map here. I'll pull up real quick. Oh, not that guy. Give me just one sec. There we go. So we had put out a forecast yesterday evening, and at this point, we had looked at it early afternoon, and we decided, okay, we're still pretty consistent with the rainfall. We did shift the strongest winds a bit further west than we had originally forecasted, but the rain is still going to be pretty consistent. So pretty much, if you're east of Halifax, you're looking at least 100 millimeters of rain, 125. And some areas, especially on Cape Breton Island, you're going to be looking at 200. So it's going to be very wet. And with the ground being already fairly saturated, especially with some rain earlier in the day, you're going to have some localized flooding just with the amount of rain because the ground won't be able to really absorb much more. I'm seeing comments asking about Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland. I'm going to start with Nova Scotia and we'll kind of spread out a bit. Yeah, because Prince Edward Island, you're also going to get hit quite hard, especially from the winds. Okay. Actually, I'll cover Prince Edward Island right now real quickly. So I'm going to pull up kind of like a satellite view of what the storm currently looks like. So you can kind of get an idea of where it's located. So right now, you can kind of see this is where what would be the eye of the storm is currently. With Sable Island just a little bit to the north. So in about, I'd say like in a couple hours or so, we're going to have it slide to the west of Sable Island before moving north. Now, if you're familiar with the way that hurricanes work, is they have this low center in the middle of the storm, and the winds kind of will go around it like a buzz saw. So they travel counterclockwise around this low pressure. And so as the storm moves further north and we get into the area where it's going to make landfall in Cape Breton Island, you're going to have the winds coming around the low pressure center and start moving coming in from the north and hitting Prince Edward Island. Because you're not going to have anything to really slow down the winds to the north and northeast, we're expecting some very strong winds across Prince Edward Island as well, and then moving into the northern shore of Pictou County in Nova Scotia. This area, you're going to probably be looking at least 140 kilometer per hour wind gusts, and they're going to be lasting for a few hours, especially in the morning hours, leading into the early afternoon. Now, as far as rain goes, you're also looking about pretty similar to what we had forecast for Nova Scotia, where it's going to be about 100 to 150 millimeters across most of the island. Maybe a bit further to the west, you're going to see a little under 100 millimeters, but still you're going to have a lot of rain. Okay, let's see what we got going on in the comments here. Yes, a lot of people are saying, what about this part of Ontario? Ontario has absolutely nothing to do with this. We're strictly live streaming right now for Atlantic Canada because this is where the hurricane is going to be hitting. So if you're worried about Ontario getting hit, don't worry at all. This is nothing to do with you. You are good to go. Let's see what else we got going. So someone says, so it's Mike Gray's Halifax. So what we're looking at when we look at the eye of the storm, where it's going to make specifically landfall, is not going to hit Halifax. However, because this storm has moved further north and has encountered part of the jet stream in a deep trough, the wind field has really begun to spread out. So if you look at the satellite image, you've got rain from this entire system as far west as Maine, and it's going to hit as far east as St. John's. So just because you're not going to be at the center of the storm, you are still going to have some significant effects. Like Halifax, we're looking at up to 100 millimeters of rain. And when it comes to wind gusts is going to be the biggest threat from this storm when you get away from the coast. So Halifax, you're still looking at wind gusts 120, 130, even a little bit more kilometers per hour. So it's still going to be very strong winds, despite the fact that you're not going to be right at the very center of the storm. As far as the center of the storm goes, there's been a little bit of shifting, I guess you could say, in the track. And this happened late this afternoon. So this is one of the models we look at that has taken multiple different scenarios into consideration and to kind of plot which way we're going to go. So as of what it says is 18Z, so that's going to be 3 p.m. It kind of shifted a little bit to the east a bit. So we're watching it track a little outside of Cape Breton and then sliding up the western coast of Newfoundland. But this is just one group of models outside of a whole bunch of different groups of models. So this can be taken with a grain of salt because for several days, it is making a beeline for the Canso area and up through Cape Breton. So although that this has shifted a bit, it is not a guarantee. If you look at what the Canadian Hurricane Center is saying, this is as of 9 p.m. They're still putting it on track to make landfall at Canso and keep going up through the northern bit of Cape Breton Island. Okay, I'm gonna come back to some of these comments. St. John's, Newfoundland. Okay, we'll start with that. So St. John's, you guys are actually going to luck out a little bit in this one. Last year, you guys got nailed pretty hard with Larry. You're dodging a bullet this time around. So looking at gusts about 70 kilometers per hour, rainfall, I'd say maybe about 20 to 40 millimeters of rain. So it's going to be a bad storm for the Avalon and most of eastern Newfoundland. but it's not going to be major widespread power outages. It's just going to be a bad fall storm from your perspective. The further west you go in Newfoundland, you're going to have a bit of a different story, especially in the area from, say, Portabass to Burgeo along the southern coast, where storm surge and high winds are going to be a huge factor. Let's see what else we got. Guysborough County. Okay. So going back into Nova Scotia real quick, I'm going to pull up my wind gust map. So when we're looking at Guysborough, we're going to be looking at some very strong winds, and even some of the strongest, especially out towards Canso. Like the further east you get, the stronger it's going to get. So if you're in Guysborough, I'm not entirely sure where exactly Aspen is, but if you're very close to the shore, you're going to have some coastal flooding issues. So we're looking at waves about 15 meters for those who work a bit more in Imperial, thinking like 40 feet. These are going to be large crashing waves. So if you are near the coast, please try to stay as far away as you can. Seek shelter at higher ground. Just try to keep the biggest thing right now if you're in Eastern Halifax, Guysborough, anywhere along southern Cape Breton, you want to stay as far away from the shore as you can, because this is where the strongest winds and the highest surf is going to be. And what's really bad about this storm in particular is you're going to be getting a lot of the winds and the rains. It's going to be coinciding with high tide, so it's going to be even higher water levels. So it's going to be recommended you stay away from the coast, get as high as possible, and I wouldn't be entirely surprised if emergency personnel later overnight, as things get worse, might consider some evacuations in some of those lower lying areas. So I see someone asking about power outages, so I'm going to just pull up the Nova Scotia Power real quick, wherever I have that. I've got so many different tabs open trying to cover everything. So as of a few minutes ago, Nova Scotia Power is reporting 185 separate power outages affecting 33,000 customers. Now, this is just the beginning. The storm is barely on our doorstep. And as it gets closer and closer, this is when the winds are going to get faster and faster as that center of the storm. Even though it's starting to fall apart, it's still technically an eye because we're still dealing with a Category 3 hurricane. As that gets closer, that's when we're going to deal with our stronger winds. What have I got here? I'm going to pull up the radar again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over from precipitation to be looking at the wind gusts. So give me just 1 sec. We're at Marion Bridge still. Now let's change this from reflectivity to a different product, velocity product. So this gives us an idea of how fast the winds go. Now, it looks a little funky right now. That's because we have some folding in it. So we got to go a little bit higher of a scan with that radar. And then you can see this is what we've got going on. So we already have some really fast winds. We're dealing with some, now this is offshore, but we're already looking at some 120 kilometer per hour wind gusts. But this is also going to be a bit more elevated because of how high of a scan I have to do. So as we get closer after midnight, 3 a.m., this is when it's going to get worse. See someone asking about Sydney mines and North Sydney. So the Sydney area, it's going to get hit quite hard. I'd say the worst of the storm is going to be. Let me see if I have that timing again. The worst of the storm for you guys is going to be mid-morning, like I'd say maybe around 8 a.m. That's going to be when it hits the hardest, because that's when that center of the storm with the strongest strongest winds is going to start really moving through there. Fredericton. Okay, so Fredericton, you guys are lucking out a bit. Let me just switch over here. Oh. Hang on 1 second. I'm sorry. I've got lots of screens, lots of tabs got to figure out. So Fredericton, you guys are pretty much in the clear for the most part. You're still going to have some wind and some rain. But if I remember correctly, you are outside of the tropical storm warnings. Let's see. I want to get a closer look at what's going on in New Brunswick. Yeah, so Fredericton, you are outside of the tropical storm warnings that Environment Canada has issued. So you're still going to have wind, you're still going to have rain, but you're going to kind of luck out similar to St. John's, Newfoundland. You're going to kind of be outside of the really main area of concern. Okay. Miramichi, it's going to be a little bit windier. Well, let me phrase that. A lot windier. You're going to get a lot of those northeastern gusts as the winds kind of come around the center of the storm, like in the counterclockwise manner, and it's going to just come right off of the water there. Okay, I'm going to just pull up my wind gust map again real quick. So I got someone asking about New Glasgow. New Glasgow is also going to be in that same boat as Miramichi, where you get the wind coming northeastward, whipping around through PEI, and then hitting the northern part of Pictou County. But we're thinking there that could be some of the stronger winds, similar to the southern coast of Guysborough and Cape Breton, where it could exceed 140 kilometers per hour. I'm going to see what I've got going here. Now, one thing I do want to mention is starting today, we did create a new group called Atlantic Canada Storm Reports, where we're going to start collecting reports for any severe weather. Now, this goes beyond after Fiona has come through. So we've started these groups for Ontario, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, where people will give us a daily report, or if they have like a storm they want to share with us, say, hey, it's raining really hard in Sydney. We love to see those reports, and we like to share them with the rest of the community. So we've got a link up on the screen. If you'd like to take a look at the group, you're more than welcome to. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to Newfoundland real quickly. Let's see what I've got. I'm going to take a look at the satellite again. So, looking at Western Newfoundland, specific Corner Brook. So, you guys are still going to get hit by this quite hard. Like, not nearly as hard as, like, St. Stephen. Oh, I moved that a little too much. Hold on 1 second here. I'm not used to solo streaming, so this is something new for me, but just bear with me. Okay, there we go. This is what we want. So when you're up in Corner Brook, you're not going to get hit as hard as the southern coast and the western coast, going up into the northern peninsula. You're still going to get quite a bit of rain, quite a bit of wind, but it's not going to be as hard, as strong rather. Let me see. I had some notes here. So yeah, you're probably, for Western Newfoundland and into Corner Brook, you're probably looking at gusts still approaching the 100 kilometer per hour range, where it's going to be quite windy. Rain-wise, I'd say maybe about 50 to 100. So you're still it's going to be wet. It's going to be rainy. It's going to be windy. but it's going to be just a regular strong storm for you. Someone asking, do I have a wind gust forecast map for New Brunswick? Unfortunately, no. We decided to really put most of our focus into Nova Scotia, mainly because the model guidances we're looking at have been consistently showing landfall and highest impacts in Nova Scotia. So this is where we really wanted to focus our attention. New Brunswick, you're going to kind of get skimmed a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, like eastern New Brunswick, you're going to get hit and it's going to be impactful, but it's... Oh, sorry, I got distracted there. Sorry. So yeah, eastern New Brunswick, you're going to get hit. You're going to have the rain and the wind, but not nearly as bad as you're thinking with eastern Nova Scotia. So we kind of just made our focus Nova Scotia at this point. Okay, I'm going to take a look at... So one of the little features that we are showing is this here. So this is called the Cape Breton Mesonet. Really great resource. And what's amazing is that this is going to be one of the hardest areas, and we have all of these different weather stations that are just displaying temperature and wind data. So as of right now, because the storm hasn't really moved into the area, we're still getting winds out of the northeast. Considerably strong winds, but once the storm comes further north, these winds are going to be coming directly out of the south, maybe even from the southeast. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that and watching these wind barbs. They actually tell us the direction and how strong the winds are. And we'll watch those turn about 90 degrees clockwise. Sorry, I got my directions mixed up there. So clockwise, and then we'll start to see them display the winds coming from the south, from the southeast. What else we got going on in the comments? Wondering about Amherst, Nova Scotia. Okay, let's take a look at Amherst. I'll pull up this again. So with Amherst, you're kind of getting out in that outer edge of the biggest impacts of the storm. So you're still going to have these winds, gusts, like 110, 120 kilometers per hour. And sorry, just someone in the comments there who has obviously seen our live streams quite frequently is asking, where's Adam with his guitar when you need him? So in our other live streams, Adam is usually the one who is running the live streams, but unfortunately, he was unable to be with us currently. He might be able to join later, so if you hang around for a little bit, you might see him. He had a family obligation, and then he's unavailable, but he could be around in the next hour or so if we keep it up. So anyways, back to Amherst. We're still looking at about 110, 120 kilometer per hour wind gusts. And then as far as rain is concerned, you're still going to be seeing a lot of rain. So you're kind of lucking out a bit with the wind, but you're going to get hit with that 100 millimeters of rain. Now, next question was, when are you expecting her to make landfall? So with landfall, we don't know exactly where, but we can have a rough estimate of when. We're looking at like roughly, I'd say about 8 a.m. is another, sorry. Yeah, so we're looking at 8 a.m. looking for landfall. Not entirely sure where it's going to be, but that's kind of what we're looking at. Husband flew out to Truro this morning, staying in a hotel, nervous about what he's in for. Truro, you're probably doing okay. Really wet. Limited on the winds, I believe. No, okay, no, I did. My original forecast, I didn't have Truro as far in. Sorry, I didn't have the 138 and 140 as far west, but the updated data that we got this morning suggested that it could be windier, so I have extended that 130, 140 range further west. So yeah, it's not going to be the strongest part of the storm, but it's going to be considerate. Likely power outages. Speaking of which, we also had an outage map that accompanied your forecast to get an idea of where the hardest hit areas are going to be. So if you're pretty much anywhere east of Truro, you're going to be looking at widespread outages possible, and this is going to be a combination of the winds, of the rain, because the winds are going to be bringing down power lines. They're going to be bringing down trees. And the biggest issue with the trees right now is the fact that they still have a lot of leaves on them. So they're going to be acting against the trees. So they're going to start pulling the branches more because the leaves are going to catch the wind. Think of it like little parachutes. They're going to catch the wind and they're going to pull it more and more. So these kinds of storms with fully foliated leaves is going to be very harmful for these trees. So yeah, we're going to expect a lot of power lines down, and it's to my knowledge that there are a lot of hydro teams posted out in Sydney and Hawkesbury. They are getting ready to fix all this damage that is anticipated. So, and then to the west of there, outages are still going to be likely. Like, you're going to be further away from where the center of the storm is going to track through the province, but these outages are still very likely with the strong winds. And then further further west you go, your outages are still possible, especially through the valley and the South Shore. You're still going to get some outages scattered through there. Another question is, what category of a hurricane is it going to be when it makes landfall? So at this point, the storm is actually transitioning away from being a hurricane to being an extratropical storm. Now, just because it's not classified as a hurricane doesn't make it any less dangerous. It still has the wind speed and of a Category 2 storm when it will make landfall. It's currently actually a Category 3, which is one of the strongest storms I believe we've had in Canadian waters in quite some time. See what else we've got. Any updates for PEI? Pretty much the entire island, you're going to have some very strong winds, 140 plus kilometer per hour wind gusts, and 100. Do I have someone joining me? Oh, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, here is future model run of how this storm is going to track through. So you can see that it's going to be kind of crossing. Let this start over. All right, so you can see as it starts to come north, that little bullseye, that's going to be your center of the storm, and it's going to start to cross and make landfall around the Canso region, moving through Cape Breton before moving out and continuing its path further north, pretty much as at that point, a really bad fall storm on the backside. Thank you. I believe that's Brennan that brought that up. Okay, I'm going to take a quick look at the power outage situation. There's likely updates from that. Yeah, so the outages are slowly creeping higher and higher. We're up to over 200 active outages, 50,000 people being affected. And this, folks, this is only the beginning. Like, this storm is just within radar range now. We can't even see the center of it on radar. Oh, let me switch back to the proper screen. Hold on a second. There we go. There we go. I'm going to go back to reflectivity because it gives us the best indication of where the rain band is. So yeah, you can really see this rain band right here. This strong, heavy rain is just kind of coming along the coastline here. Let's see. I'm going to take a look. We actually have one of the webcams. I kind of want to take a peek at it, see what it's, how it looks. It's actually Peggy's Cove, so probably won't be able to see much because it is dark out, but you can kind of get indication. You got a lot of blowing rain. Yeah, it doesn't look, from what you can see, it doesn't look too bad there yet. Yeah, a lot of people are saying they still have power in Halifax. And I would imagine a lot of Halifax is going to remain with power just because everything is more condensed. And I believe a lot of areas of Halifax, correct me if I'm wrong, have underground wires or power lines. So anything that's going to be underground, you're going to be less likely to lose power in these kinds of storms because they're not going to be impacted by high winds. One of the areas of most concern for power outages are the major transformers along the causeway to Cape Breton, because those are going to be right out in the open. They're really tall, and the eye of the storm is going to go plow right through there. So if those go down, that's going to be a serious situation. But luckily, we've got lots of power crews from across the country have already reported to the area. They're ready to get the lights back on, hopefully very quickly. Okay, gonna go back to the forecast map. Got a question about Antigonish, so I'm gonna pull that up. Antigonish, you are going to be dead center, especially with where the eye of the storm is going to be tracking to your east. So you're going to be getting a lot of those northeasterly winds. So you're still going to be in the 130, 140 kilometer per hour range with that 100, 150, 200 plus millimeters of rain. And the closer you are to the northern shore, then the stronger those winds are going to be through there. See, I can see if the team has any messages of anything I should be bringing up. So, question about PEI. PEI is going to be really straightforward. A lot of rain, heavy wind coming from the north. You're looking at the 140 kilometer per hour. Some models even suggesting 150 kilometer per hour wind gusts coming from the due north, and it's going to be drenching rain. I would imagine there's quite a bit of rain already. From what I've been seeing in Nova Scotia, there's some areas have already had 50 millimeters of rain, and it's just beginning. So it's going to be a wet, windy night, folks. Okay, how bad is it going to be around Greenwood? Greenwood, you guys are you're further west, so you're going to be looking at 100, 110 kilometer per hour wind gusts, maybe even a bit lower. And rain-wise, about, I'd say about 70 to 150, 100, sorry, 75 to 100 millimeter of rain. So, and being on the north coast there, you're going to be in better shape than if you were on the northern shore of Pictou County. Let's see. Sydney. What about Sydney? So, Sydney is going to be one of the really hard hit areas, especially being right at the edge of Cape Breton. It's going to be some of the strongest winds through that area. You see on our on the forecast map we've done, you're in the 140 plus kilometer per hour wind gust range. One of our friends that's a constant presence in our Ontario live streams on YouTube has just kind of made an appearance saying might have diverted further west. Very interesting. Yeah, because a couple hours ago, the latest models were showing a shift to the east, with landfall actually occurring along the southern shore of Newfoundland and completely bypassing a landfall on Nova Scotia. Latest radar frames. So that'd be really interesting. So if that happens, then Cape Breton is still going to get hit pretty hard, but it looks, according to this, it looks like it could be more along Cottles Harbor. So most estimates are putting a landfall around, oh, where is it? Okay, I can't really find. Yeah, it's going to be Canso, Sherbrooke area. And that's going to be where the biggest possibility for landfall is. But going further west, oh, I got more. Okay, yeah, here we go. So I'm not sure which model this is here, but it kind of reaffirms where we think that landfall is going to be. So this is the NAM. This is the most recent run. This is an American model. And you kind of get an idea too of what I was saying in PEI, where you're going to have those wind gusts 140, 150 kilometers per hour for pretty much the entire island at some point during this storm. And those wind gusts are coming from the northeast. I've got to answer a quick question from the team here. Someone's asking, covering New Brunswick. Yeah, we're discussing New Brunswick. As I mentioned before, our main focus has been Nova Scotia, because that has been where all the models for several days have suggested this is where landfall is going to be. This is going to be the hardest hit area. So we really put our focus into Nova Scotia, but New Brunswick, without a doubt, is still going to feel some impacts. Pull up that satellite again. Kind of gives you an idea of where the storm is and where it's going. Pull that back up. So you can kind of see she's making her approach on Sable Island right there. Yeah, 3 a.m. is going to kind of bypass there. Stick to the west, so they're going to have some really, really strong southern winds. Some models are suggesting even 200 kilometer per hour wind gusts going to blow right through there. So it's going to be a very interesting situation come morning, because that could very well change some of the landscape of the island itself. Because there's very little elevation in the island and it's a lot of dunes. So large windstorms like this will make shifts in these sand dunes. Anyways, getting back to New Brunswick. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. So New Brunswick, you're specifically under a tropical storm warning on the eastern side of the province. So these tropical storm warnings are indicative of you being impacted by the storm, but not the strongest impact. So pulling up one of these warnings from, what else do I got coming up? I think we got another model coming up. I know Brennan's running some models for me. Okay, so there's a good indication of the rainfall that is expected for eastern New Brunswick. So you can see we're looking at like 45 millimeters and higher going southeast. So in particular, that's going to be probably that 41 is going to be Moncton. And that's going to be wind gusts. So you're kind of like in the 80, 90 kilometer per hour wind gusts. That's all right. So we're going to take a look at this the satellite image again. This is really great because we're kind of getting an idea of where the storm is. This is going to be the center of a storm, and around here is going to be your strongest winds. And it looks like it's going to be, according to this, tracking and bypassing through the edge of Cape Breton, past Sydney, before going further north along the west coast of Newfoundland. So this is just one idea of where the storm is going to go. Let's see, any more comments that need to address? Okay, let's see. Take a look at the mesonet, see if that's been changing any. It doesn't appear to be, but I might need to refresh this page. See if, I don't know if this is live or if it's needs refreshing. Let's take a look. No, it looks to be pretty oh, that's interesting. So we're starting to see a little bit of shift in the wind to the east of Sydney along what are you doing? Oh, it didn't like that. Okay, yeah. So you can back. Oh, this website doesn't like me. Okay, so as I was saying, you're starting to see the shift in the winds. They're starting to come from the east, and the temperature is actually increasing. Before we were looking at 14, 15, but this edge here is kind of going, it has increased in temperature, looking at 18, 19, and that's indicative of the approach here. So as the storm comes closer, it's going to have some of that warmer tropical air with it. Some people are wondering, okay, well, we've got this big hurricane. How come we don't usually get hurricanes like this? So typically, the cutoff for fuel for a hurricane is much further south. But this year, we've had a lot warmer surface temperatures in the ocean between Bermuda and Sable Island. So this hurricane has had more and more fuel to work with and hasn't been able to maintain its strength. It was a Category 4 up until earlier today and has since been dropped down to a Category 3. So it is starting to lose fuel a bit as it continues to churn north. And we're looking at it weakening to a Category 2 before landfall. What's interesting is, according to some models, as this storm is moving further north, it's encountering a really deep trough from the jet stream, which is pulling in a lot of cool Arctic air. So along the northern edge of the storm, this tropical rain is actually going to turn into snow for some reason, for some regions, sorry. We're looking at Western Labrador, where it borders with Quebec, could actually end up seeing some snow, especially in the higher elevations. Okay, someone's asking, what's the difference between the yellow markers and the green markers? So it's a scale that they use to delineate temperature. So the yellow is kind of showing where the warmer temperature is. If it was like really hot, I would imagine they'd probably use orange and red for displaying the differences. It's just an easy scale they use. If you wanted to zoom out, then you can kind of just see at a quick glance what are your temperatures looking like. So let me see if I can zoom out here. So when I zoom out really far, you can kind of see, okay, we've got some lighter greens and some blues down here. This is where it's going to be cooler. If I hover, you see like, hey, 9 degrees, 8.2. Now you're getting into 10. Up here is 13, 12, and along the coast here, you're looking at 19. So that's the difference there. Unfortunately, we don't have one of these down in Sable Island because I'd be really interested to see what we're looking at there. But I've got it pulled off to the side. Kind of want to see, as the storm comes closer, we're expecting record low pressures. What the current Canadian record for low pressure was actually set in 1977 and was set at St. Anthony in Newfoundland, right on the northern peninsula. It was 940 millibars. That was from a winter storm, and you guys know that winter storms in Atlantic Canada can be fierce. But we do not typically get this strong of a storm this time of year. So the fact that this storm is still a Category 3 hurricane, it's got really low pressure, it's very easily going to break the record when it eventually makes landfall. Some models were saying as low as 920 millibars. More conservatively, we're thinking in the 930, 935 range, which is still going to break the record without a doubt. Okay, I've got something I got to pull up here. Okay, got some reports I'm going to bring up. Just give me 1 second to do that. Figure out which tab I have that open in. I am not used to being on my own for this, so it does take a little bit of time to scroll through some things. There we go. Unless Brennan's going to pull something up for me, maybe? Right, we're looking at some of the model runs that's kind of suggesting what our pressure is going to be when it makes landfall. Question is, what category is expected to be at landfall? So at landfall, it's not going to actually be a hurricane as it has kind of transitioned into an extra tropical storm. So it's technically not a hurricane, but it's going to be Category 2 strength. Hopefully that helps answer your question, Jessica. Well, thank you, Sandra. Sandra just said I'm doing great, so I appreciate that. This is my first solo live stream. I've done bits of solo work, but like they take over when Adam has to leave, but never completely on my own. So this is new territory for me. Okay, let's see what we're looking at here. Let's see what we got. This is from Craig CC. Once I get that pulled up. So Craig CC, he is a well-known meteorologist. He is from Mississippi State University. down in Mississippi, where I actually got my own certificate in meteorology. So I'm a little partial, but I think it's a great school. Let's see if it will load. I'm not in my typical setup. I'm actually visiting my parents, but they were kind enough to let me use their office to stream for you guys this evening. There we go. Okay, let's pull this up for everyone to see. So this is the readings from a reconnaissance aircraft. So the hurricane hunters, they will fly planes into several different spots of the hurricane and take readings. So this is from, let's see, is that 9 Eastern or? I'm going to guess this is 9 Eastern time. So about an hour ago. Oh, I lost it. Open this back up. Come on. You see Cape Breton is trending in Canada. I'm not surprised. It's a really big storm. A lot of people are going to be impacted by this. Okay, so what we're looking at is different data readouts from the aircraft that intercepted the storm. So it looks like the pressure is down to 928 millibars. That is very low. Actually, to the point where no hurricane has ever made landfall with such a low pressure north of Florida since 1851. So this is almost borderline insane at how strong this is. And that's mostly due to the fact of how unseasonably warm the sea surface temperatures were between Bermuda and Sable Island. As it continued to give fuel to this storm, and it was able to keep going, keep churning, whereas usually as soon as it kind of hit that Bermuda barrier and the colder sea surface temperatures, it would begin to die down. Interesting to see. Yeah. Wow. That is very low pressure. And it's low pressure that really increases that wind speed. Let's see what else we've got. Okay, I'm going to take a look at some of these readings from Sable Island. I'm seeing some concerning reports about the sensors there. So looks like we haven't had a pressure reading from Sable Island in a few hours now. That's definitely worrisome. The storm is still quite a bit away. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're looking at the most recent wind gust from an hour ago was recorded at 120. And that is definitely going to be much stronger than that. It's possible that the sensors have been damaged. Let's see what else we got here. For those of you who aren't familiar with Sable Island, it's actually home to a population of wild horses. And I know a lot of people are concerned about, Patricia Riley in the comments is confirming the weather sensors and cameras are reportedly down. So it's possible that they have lost power and unable to operate their sensors and report what they're actually seeing. So as I was saying, there's a population of wild horses that lives on this island, and a lot of people are concerned about their well-being. Now, keep in mind that these horses have lived there for, I believe, over 150 years, so they're no stranger to very strong storms like this, and they will likely, by instinct, take shelter on the lee side of the dunes that are there, because when you're on the lee side of a dune, the wind will not really curve around too much. It'll blow right over. So the horses will know what to do, and I'm sure they're going to be fine. Let's see. Seeing our power outages are steadily increasing. Well, that's the wrong window. Yeah, we're up to over 400 separate outages now, 87,000 affected customers. It's, like I said before, this is only the beginning, unfortunately. It's going to get worse before it gets better. There was another interesting tweet that I wanted to pull up. Let's see if I can get that up on the screen. I'm going to pull up the satellite view real quick while I'm doing that. You can kind of get an idea of where everything is situated. Yeah, Dominique in the comments has mentioned the 4 staff at Sable Island. So there are 4 people who work at the island and maintain the weather sensors, the cameras, you name it, and they do research as well. They have decided to stay on the island. There are some buildings there that they will be taking shelter in. That is going to be a very intense night for them. I pray for the best for them. Is I will be honest, it is not something I would ever want to live through. Is you have to have nerves of steel to do that. And I know there are quite a few storm chasers who have made their way out to Nova Scotia, along with Weather Network crews like the Weather Network Global. I know they've sent a few meteorologists out there. It's a very scary situation to put yourself in the middle of a hurricane, and more power to them. It's just, honestly, it was not something I could do. But coming back to what was shared to me by the team, so this analysis looks at the wind and the waves, and it's actually showing 63-foot waves near the center of the storm. Now, this is because the storm is still a Category 3 storm, so as it approaches Nova Scotia right along the coast, it won't be nearly as large, but they're still going to be considerable, probably around 45 feet. Oh, I've been corrected. I thought there was only 4 that were permanently there. There's 4 on a regular. There's more than 4 on a regular basis, but only 4 have stayed. Thank you for clarifying that, Dominique. I was under the impression there was only 4 there permanently. Thank you. See anything else I should be bringing up? I know Brennan is keeping me updated. What do we got here? Okay, looks like Beaver Island, I believe. Let me take a look at that. I've got Environment Canada weather stations open in a background tab here, just so I can kind of keep an eye on how things are progressing as the storm keeps moving further north. The Beaver Island. Oh, wow. Yeah. So, looking at so Beaver Island has most recently reported as about 20 minutes ago a gust of 141 kilometers per hour. So it is very quickly getting quite windy out there. Okay, let's see. Anything else Brendan thinks I should bring up? Yes, this sustained winds of 121 kilometers per hour. And it's one of the colder stations right now. And unfortunately, we do not have a pressure reading there. So it could be just a glitch in the barometer, and we might regain the ability to know what the pressure is there. Last reading was from 10 o'clock. It was 976 millibars. So a strong storm by all means at that level, but it's still going to get much lower. Gonna answer some questions in the comments. Yeah, we got Brandon saying the storm chasers, hurricane chasers, they're very gutsy. Kudos to them, but too scared to do that. Yeah, I think a lot of people would look at that and say, nope, not for me. Does Bedford have power? Let me take a look. I know our power outages were getting up to 95,000 people without power now. Let's take a look at Bedford. Oh, someone in the comments has actually answered for me. Thank you, Michelle. Yes, we do. Projections for Truro, Nova Scotia. Looks like we won't be getting hit as bad as the areas like Eastern Cape Breton. Yes, that's correct. Eastern Cape Breton is still going to be the hardest hit area, but don't be fooled that by being further west, you're completely safe. You're still going to be getting the winds coming from the north, being on the west side of the storm. I believe Brennan's still is going to be bringing up a wind gust graphic for me. Yep. Yeah, so as that storm keeps coming closer, the wind gusts along northern Pictou and blanking, and part of Cumberland and even the Colchester counties, you're still going to be getting really strong wind gusts up to 140 kilometers per hour. I'm gonna bring up my wind gust map in the background once we switch back over. Has the eye of the storm reached Nova Scotia yet? No, it has not. It is still within Canadian waters, but it has not quite reached Nova Scotia yet. It's still to the southwest of Sable Island at this point. Looking at somewhere between, my estimate is about 8 a.m. landfall. Some estimates are a little bit earlier. It really depends on how this storm continues to interact with the jet stream. So the jet stream there, it's really fast winds, and it's what's actually steering the storm and bringing it closer into Nova Scotia much faster than originally anticipated. Montague, PEI has lost power. That's actually quite early, considering the strongest winds are several hours out. Dartmouth has lost power. Bedford still has power. What time should the... Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of just answered that for you. Let's see. Anything else I should be bringing up? Keep bringing giving your questions and comments into the stream here. I'll try to address as many as I can. Seeing some questions about New Brunswick, and I will be completely honest that I am not as familiar with New Brunswick as I am with Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, but I will certainly do my best to answer everything that I can. So I've got a question about Dieppe. Now, so Dieppe is going to be in that same stretch as Amherst, where you're going to be getting quite a bit of that strong wind. Oh yeah, that's right. So I had to refresh my memory where exactly Dieppe was. So you're in the Moncton area. So what Brennan shared the models from earlier, looking at about 70, 80, 90 kilometer per hour wind gusts from that, and I don't quite remember what the rainfall total looked like, but I believe it was in the 75 millimeter range. got a question asking, how long is this storm supposed to last? Pretty much at this point, 24 hours, it'll be really starting to die down. Let me see if I had a little timeline brought up, but I guess not. But yeah, things are going to start improve across much of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, starting in the afternoon hours. That eye of the storm is really going to start pushing further north of Cape Breton. We're going to have lingering effects through western Newfoundland through the rest of the afternoon tomorrow and into the evening, possibly the overnight hours for the tip of the Northern Peninsula around St. Anthony. But for the most part, by the end of the day tomorrow, it should begin to clear up. It's going to be a bit breezy and maybe a little bit, a bit of drizzle, light rain, but nothing too wild. Let's see here. So I've got someone asking about, is there much danger of flooding in the Tri-Counties? So in the Tri-Counties, the wind gusts are going to be considerably lighter than Cape Breton area. So the threat of flooding there is much smaller. You're still going to have some surf, some storm surge through the area, but the winds and the waves will be much smaller. So maybe a bit of slight coastal flooding, some erosion, which erosion is going to be a huge issue along coastal areas throughout the province. But down in the Tri-Counties, you're doing okay. We got someone asking, wonder if any of the coastal towns and cities have webcams on. So I actually have a webcam from Peggy's Cove I was looking at earlier, and it's just dark and windy and rainy, and you can't really tell what's going on there. Actually, I think we might be frozen, so that's not a good sign. Let's see if I can get it back up running. Nope. That's from earlier. That is definitely not what it looks like. There we go. Yeah, so it's dark and windy and raining, and that's probably one of the worst things about the situation here is we're coming in, it's going to be peak wind gusts, and it's going to be dark. I know for a lot of people, not being able to see what's going on outside really drives up the anxiety with storms. So I definitely understand that there are a lot of people who are very nervous. They don't know what they're going to wake up to tomorrow, essentially. Yeah, one thing that someone's mentioning in the comments that I didn't mention yet, actually I might have, is when we're projecting landfall around 8 a.m., this is when our strongest winds and our biggest waves are going to be hitting, which is also going to be coinciding with high tide. So we're going to have a significant amount of water rushing into these coastal areas, and the storm surge is going to be considerable. So one thing I kind of looked into going into this, we're looking at drawing comparisons between Hurricane Fiona, Hurricane Juan, and Hurricane Dorian. So for those that might not remember, Juan was back in 2002, was a Category 2 hurricane. It was small, but it was very intense. And didn't have a whole lot of rain. Dorian, on the other hand, from 3 years ago, 2019, it was a much larger storm. It had more rain, but it wasn't very strong in the winds aspect, because at that point, it was only a tropical storm. It wasn't even a Category 1 strength storm. So looking at when Hurricane Juan hit, storm surge from that was a little over 1.5 meters. And then the record water level was about almost 3 meters in some areas. And that was a storm that had about 970 millibars of pressure. We're looking at much lower record-breaking pressure. So we could expect at least another half a meter of storm surge with the high tide. So if you are coastal area, low-lying area, the chances are you might be inundated with water if you are too close to the coast. So, and that is specifically going to be for southern. Oh, what do we got? Oh no, that's Peggy's Cove camera acting up again. My apologies. So let me just change back to wind gust map. So, as I was saying about the storm surge, it's going to be specifically for the areas with the strongest wind gusts, looking at the southern coast of Cape Breton and along the southern shore of Guysborough County. That's going to be the biggest threat right there. Let's see. Question is, how accurate is the Windy app? Windy app is one of my favorite apps to use, especially during these kinds of storms, to kind of get an idea of wind direction and wind strength. So it's actually quite reliable, and it uses numerical weather models to predict what the winds are going to do in strength and direction. Question, would you say this storm will be similar to Superstorm Sandy? So that is a very big question. There have been quite a few comparisons being made between this storm and Superstorm Sandy from 2012 that hit New York, New Jersey. The big thing with this is it's a very similar interaction with the jet stream, where it gets the storm gets picked up and funneled very quickly into land. And it has also spread out quite wide, similar to how Superstorm Sandy was. Now, that storm was a very large and intense storm, and I think it could be a fair comparison to draw to some degree. Holly says the valley has been all over the place with reports. Hard to get anything to match up. Yeah, that it's one of those spots was kind of tough. You got to figure out just how much the wind is going to come through Prince Edward Island in northern Nova Scotia, and how much is it going to die down before it crosses and gets into the valley. But we've kind of got an idea looking at 90 to 110 kilometer per hour wind gusts through the area. Holly is saying, reading on Nova Scotia Fire Emergency Info page in Halifax, there are power lines and trees on fire. That was from an hour ago. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of trees and power lines going down, and sometimes that can create these fire situations. If you are out in the storm for whatever reason, if you approach a down power line, stay away from it and report it to emergency services to be dealt with. You don't know if you have a live wire or not, and it frankly is not worth the risk. So stay as far away from it as you can. So we are looking at now up to 110,000 people, or customers rather, through Nova Scotia Power. 116,000 without power, and that's probably about a tenth the population of the province. looks like one of the main issues is around Sheet Harbor. Got a big area around Canso that is without power, and for some reason Shelburne is without power, or at least west of Shelburne. So that's going to be kind of an odd one out. Most of the outages are going to be further to the east. Any news on PEI? My husband is there and I'm freaking out. I'm in Ontario. Okay, Tina. Yeah, things in PEI are still doing okay. Like, the wind is definitely picking up there. Don't get me wrong. And it's going to get stronger and wetter. And maybe Brennan can bring up a wind gust model to kind of give us an idea of what we're looking at in the coming hours in PEI. I'm not sure if Brennan has that on hand for me, but looking at about 140, 150. There we go. Kilometer per hour wind gusts coming into the morning as the eye of the storm begins to track through parts of Nova Scotia. So as long as he's somewhere safe and to take shelter during that peak time, everything should be fine. I imagine it'll probably take a day or two to have the either the bridge or the ferry running, whichever way he would leave, or even because the bridge is definitely closed. I can guarantee you, if it's not closed, it will be. Any word on Antigonish? Daughter's at school there. So currently for outages in Antigonish, yeah, there's quite a bit going on for outages there. Yeah, about 4,000 customers affected by outages in the Antigonish area. But as I was saying, similar to PEI, the winds are strong now, but they are only going to get stronger. Let's take a look at Maisonette, and I can kind of get an idea of what the current conditions are in Antigonish. Unless, yeah, let's say that should cover it there. Oh, come on. Come on. There we go. Okay, zoom in. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so this one doesn't seem to be working right now, but we've got other ones that are close enough to kind of give us an idea. So looking at 13 degrees, winds coming out of the north, something like that. Looking at about 60 kilometers per hour. If my knots to kilometers per hour is decent. Let's see. 55 kilometers per hour winds. So it's definitely windy there. It's going to increase in the overnight hours and into the morning. Oh, Tina says he's an Airbnb right on the water. Do you know if he's on the North Shore or the South Shore? Because that's going to be a big difference. North Shore, that's when you're going to be dealing with the flooding risk with waves and storm surge coming with the winds that are moving north from the north. Sorry. People are asking about Halifax. Okay, let's touch on Halifax here. Give me just a second. Just actually, we'll scroll down Maisonette. Take a look. See, I know it's mostly Cape Breton, but we might have some coverage down in Halifax. Yeah, we do. So Halifax, we're still looking at some northwesterly. Let me try that again. Northwesterly winds. There we go. So winds haven't quite picked up there too much yet. Let's see here. I want to look at satellite image. So we're going to switch over here. So you can see here's the center of our storm here. This is where our winds are going to start wrapping around. So you can kind of see that the winds are from the very outer side, start wrapping around. And it's going to continue to get stronger winds through there. Power outages, I know there's quite a few power outages being reported through Halifax. Bedford is still doing okay. Lower Sackville. Dartmouth, yeah, quite a few power outages through there. Yeah, Catlin is confirming Nova Scotia Power is saying 135,000 customers already without power. And unfortunately, that is only going to get worse. Sydney is going to be probably one of the hardest hit areas as long as the current track is maintained. With Sydney, you're going to be right at the edge of it. Luckily, not as bad as Lewisburg, where you've got the southern winds coming in with that storm surge. But Sydney is going to be very windy, very wet. 140, 150 kilometer per hour wind gusts, probably up to 200 millimeters of rain. Is going to be a rough ride for you guys. Got Patricia here. It says, taken from Nova Scotia Power Facebook page. Safety is our top priority as Hurricane Fiona makes its way towards Nova Scotia. We're expecting wind gusts over 80 kilometers per hour, which means we will need to stand down our crews once this happens for their safety. Yes, that's very important distinction to make. So once it gets too windy, it is not safe for the power crews to be out working, because that actually puts them in danger if they're working on a power line and a tree could possibly fall on them. So they will pull the crews until it is safe to do so. Let's see. Anything? All right, I'm going to take a look at our radar here to kind of get an idea of where these rain bands are. So you can kind of still see the outer rain bands. Oh, come on. There we go. Yeah, some very heavy rain moving into southern Guysborough, moving into southern Cape Breton Island. And this is where you're going to start to see some accumulation is going to be through here. If I zoom in, you can kind of get a better idea of where things are. Maybe. Come on, you know you want to. There we go. Yeah, so here's Canso, here's Guysborough, and then moving into southern Cape Breton. This is where you're going to be getting a lot of accumulation. And this is the concern through this area for that storm surge, for those big crashing waves. If you're in this area and you're along the coast, you need to be ready for a lot of water. Okay, let's see. We got another question here. I'm going to take a look at something real quick so I can actually answer that for you. Okay, so I thought it was. Okay, gonna pull up my wind map again for Nova Scotia here. So got someone asking about the northern Cape Breton Island, especially around Cape Breton Highlands Park. So it's not going to be as bad as the southern parts of the island, but you're still going to be looking at some considerable winds. And some models even have the eye of the storm, the center of the storm, tracking through this area. So it's going to be quite stormy. I hope this person isn't actually camping in this area, because I know some people do camp here. I hope they've got proper shelter and are prepared for a considerable storm. What will the approximate wind speed around Truro? So we're looking at probably like 130, 140 kilometer per hour wind gust range. Some models are suggesting it could be higher as the winds curl around and come from the north through Prince Edward and through parts of Pictou County. Let's see. I'll take a look at the camera in Peggy's Cove, see if you can tell just how windy it is. Jessica's asking, will the storm surge be a big concern? That is entirely dependent on where you are. In areas along the southern shore of Guysborough County, through southern Cape Breton, and even the southern shore of Newfoundland, if you're in that area, pretty much from Port aux Basques through to Burgeo, those areas are going to be your biggest concerns for storm surge, with the southern winds coming with the storm as it pushes further north. That's going to be the storm surge threat area. Let's look at updated satellite. So you can see how the winds kind of, the clouds and the subsequent winds are wrapping around the storm. Oh, hold on just a second. It's gonna pull that up there. So you can kind of see how it's wrapping around. So the winds are coming around counterclockwise, like a buzzsaw. Whoop, sorry, I clicked on that. Like a buzzsaw around the storm, and it's being pulled into this low pressure center. So when you have a low pressure storm, you're bringing the winds are directed to the center, and high pressure is going to be what you consider to be a clear day. The winds come out from the center. Lisa asked, my parents are in Grand Lake near the Halifax airport. How will the winds be in that area? I'll pull up that wind gust map again. So not going to be the strongest winds in the Halifax area, Grand Lake area, but they're going to be considerable, and it's going to be quite a bit of rain, especially. Halifax looking at 120, 130 kilometer per hour winds. The issue is if the storm begins to turn and track a bit more to the west, that's going to be putting a bit more risk on Halifax than currently anticipated. Let's see. I'm going to take a look. I know the Nova Scotia Power is updating their outages every 10 minutes. Yeah, 130,000 without power. I'm in Glace Bay, besides Sydney. What time should I expect peak impact? So we're looking at in the morning hours. I'm going to have to see if I can pull up an exact idea here. Let's take a peek here. Yeah, strongest winds are going to be in the morning. Looking at probably the 8, 9, 10 a.m. range. And then that's when they're going to start to really die down. Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. They're going to start dying out later on, but they're going to be the strongest starting 8 a.m. Maureen asks, have the rains and winds started? Yes, they have. If I pull up our radar here, and I'll just kind of zoom out. Give me one sec. A little too zoomed in. Oh, come on. Yeah, you can see the first outer band of the storm has really made its way into parts of eastern Nova Scotia. I look at this on here. How are we looking? Yeah, you can see even to the west, there's the bands have made it in. And you see that they're kind of curling around. That what they're curling around is that low pressure center. Sorry. Is there a big variance in the storm track on the models, or are they all pretty close? It really depends on which models you're looking at. If I pull this up real quick. So we have what's called ensemble members in individual models. So this is the ensemble for, which one is that? I think that's the GFS. So it's one of the American models. And what an ensemble does is it takes different variables and tweaks them ever so slightly to see what the potential outcomes are. So as we get closer to landfall, it will be definitely more concrete. Like you can see that down at the bottom is where the storm currently was at the time that this was initialized. And the track is pretty close, and then that's when it starts to veer away. But we have what's also called a cone of uncertainty that the National Hurricane Center has put out. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. So this was from 8 p.m. So you can kind of see this is where the storm was. This kind of yellow blob, that is the extent of the tropical storm force winds. So you're looking at 39 to 73 mile per hour winds. And you can see that there's a very large area that can be impacted by those strong winds. And from where the center of the storm is, it's saying it can track anywhere within this cone of uncertainty. And the cone gets wider and wider the farther it goes because you have more variation that can take place. But close by, it's still indicating a landfall in the Cape Breton area. And you also kind of see something very similar from the Canadian Hurricane Center, where they're saying, okay, well, we expect it to be here, but it could be anywhere between these lines. And the further you go, the more uncertainty you get. And that uncertainty is just from different variables changing ever so slightly. Like, okay, if the surface temperature of the water is 1 or 2 degrees different, it'll veer suddenly left or right. So it gives you that possibility where it can go which way. But between the National Hurricane Center and the Canadian Hurricane Center, there's a general agreement of landfall occurring around the Canso area. Mary is asking, is the causeway closed? I'm not sure if it is yet. I wouldn't be surprised if they have closed it already. Let me check. Unless someone can answer that before me. That's the problem with being in the basement. The internet is not always the greatest, so I apologize if I do cut in and out. Okay, yes. The Canso Causeway is closed to high-sided vehicles. Now, when was this posted? Oh, that's okay. That is not current. My apologies. Okay. from CTV News. They will have the information. Cancel Causeway. It was closed as of 6 p.m. today, and it will remain closed until 6 a.m. on Sunday. So we're looking at 36 hours of that being closed. So if you are on Cape Breton and you need to get to the rest of the province, or if you are in the peninsula and need to get out to Cape Breton, unfortunately, you're going to have to wait till Sunday. And I see a couple people in the comments answering yes. Yeah, a lot of things have been preemptively closed and will not be open until Sunday or Monday, depending on what kind of situation we're looking at for power outages. If we're looking at very large, widespread outages, it's possible that schools may be closed on Monday, depending on how quickly power can be restored to some of these communities. Speaking of which, we're creeping up on 150,000 customers without power throughout the province. Let's see. Where are some of them? Yeah. Sheet Harbor through Spry Bay and Murphy Cove. It's a big area being with outages. Outside of Bridgetown, Shelburne into Middle Ohio, Kennetcook, east of Amherst into Amherst Shore, and Canso and west towards Guysborough is also a large area. Surprisingly, not too many outages yet on Cape Breton. But as I've said a few times, that is going to change as the wind speeds increase overnight and into the morning hours. Thinking we're coming up on midnight, we might shut it down. I imagine people are wanting to probably call a night, try to get some sleep despite the howling winds that are going to be picking up. Thinking like between 3 and 8 is going to be when things start to really ramp up. Wonder how things are looking for Sable Island. See if we might have an update from them. Oh, come on. Sable Island, where are you? There we go. Yeah, we have nothing from Sable Island for the last at least hour. So it's definitely possible that they have lost power and any way of making measurements and weather measurements and giving them to Environment Canada. You got a comment on YouTube. Hi, are you part of Adam's crew? Yes, I am. I am one of the meteorologists on the team at Instant Weather. Adam is unavailable this evening, so I'm just doing our first ever hurricane live stream. Patricia's asking, how's PEI doing? How is PEI doing? Let's take a look. I'll take a look at our radar. See, I'm not sure how much it's begun raining there. I know you guys are getting some outer bands of the rain that's starting to move north. Let me pull that up. I'm going to see if we can't get a better look what's going on here. I'm going to change to this radar station here to get a better idea of Prince Edward Island. Yeah, so we're starting to get that rain moving into the province. Hard to get a really good sense of how heavy it's raining because these radars, they kind of triangulate, give it a rough idea, but it would be really nice if we had a radar station actually on Prince Edward Island. So yeah, it looks like you're starting to really get into those rain bands as the storm continues moving north. like the rest of Nova Scotia, getting into the early morning hours and after sunrise. That's going to be when things really start to pick up. Robin, I joined late. Are you Nova Scotia? I am actually not in Nova Scotia. I am in Ontario, but I've been the one that's been posting updates and the forecasts on the Nova Scotia page. I also shared some of those updates to Newfoundland, and over the winter, I am going to be trying to post daily temperature forecasts for Nova Scotia, so you can look forward to those. See any more comments? Yeah, it's getting to the point where we're going to call it a night. Fortunately, I do not have Adam's skills in guitar or singing, so there will be no song from me this evening. Fortunately, he was not able to join us due to a prior commitment with his family. Oh, Robin says, I wasn't sure if they sent you. Unfortunately, no, we don't have any live on location with the company. Maybe in the coming years. We're still just a very small group, and we don't have those kinds of resources yet, but we're hoping maybe someday we'll be able to do something like that. Brennan says he's gonna play me out, perhaps on the kazoo. I don't know. Oh, we've got music now. Thank you, Brennan. Well, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in this evening. We hope if you are in the path of the storm, you will stay safe. We're looking at this really ramping up overnight. Between 3 and 8 a.m. is when we're going to really start to see things get a bit crazy. Oh, okay. I'm going to answer one really question. Girlfriend lives in Truro. How is it going to get there? Thank you for pausing the music, Brendan. So we're looking at, like I was saying before, the 3 to 8 a.m. range is when things are really going to start to ramp up in wind speeds. So during those times, you're going to see winds gusts getting up into the 140, maybe even 150 kilometer hours range, coming from the north side of the storm as the storm moves northwards to the east. I hope that helps you a bit, Melissa. Brendan, you want to hit me with some of that music again? I like the outro music. It's nice. So yeah, like I said, everyone, thank you for tuning in. If you're in the path of the storm throughout Atlantic Canada, please stay safe. Hopefully not too many people lose power and have damage. And we will check in with you tomorrow morning.